What I'm about to reveal to you will change the way you pray, the way you wait, and the way you experience God's presence in your life forever. Jesus practiced something so powerful, so transformative, that even his closest disciples didn't fully understand it until after his resurrection. And right now, in this very moment, he wants you to discover the secret weapon that every person who has ever experienced a major breakthrough with God has used. It's not what you think. It's not more words. It's not louder prayers. It's not constant activity or endless striving. It's silence. And I know what you're thinking. Silence. In a world that's screaming at you from every direction, in a season where you need answers yesterday, when your situation is urgent and your heart is breaking and everything in you wants to cry out and demand that God move right now. Yes, silence. But stay with me, because this isn't the silence of giving up. This isn't the silence of doubt or defeat. This is the silence that shakes hell and opens heaven. This is the silence that Jesus himself used before every major miracle, every life-changing decision, every moment of divine power. You see, there's something happening in the silence that the enemy absolutely does not want you to discover. There's a transfer of power, a download of wisdom, a shift in the spiritual realm that only occurs when you stop talking long enough to hear what God has been trying to tell you all along. And the reason most believers never experience the fullness of God's promises isn't because God isn't speaking. It's because they've never learned to be quiet long enough to listen. Jesus is telling you right now that your breakthrough is connected to your willingness to wait in his presence without saying a word. Your next level is hidden in the silence you've been avoiding. The answer you've been desperately seeking won't come through another prayer formula or another worship song or another sermon. It's going to come when you finally stop, become still, and let God be God in the quiet place where only you and he exist. Think about this. Before Jesus chose the 12 disciples who would change the world, he spent the entire night alone on a mountain in silence with the Father. Before he fed the 5,000, he withdrew to a solitary place. Before he raised Lazarus from the dead, he waited. He stood at that tomb in silence while everyone around him questioned and wept and doubted. And in that silence, he was communing with the Father, receiving instruction, aligning himself with divine timing. Here's what most people don't know about silence. It's not passive. It's not weak. It's not wasted time. Silence before God is the most active, the most powerful, the most productive thing you can do in the spirit realm. When you enter into silence with intentionality, with expectation, with your heart postured to receive, you're creating space for God to work in ways that your words could never accomplish. You're stepping out of the way so that his voice can finally break through all the noise, all the chaos, all the confusion that's been drowning out his whisper. God wants you to know that he's been waiting for you to stop trying to figure everything out on your own. He's been waiting for you to stop filling every moment with noise, with distractions, with the sound of your own voice telling him what he already knows. He wants you to trust him enough to sit in his presence and say nothing, to bring him your broken heart, your desperate situation, your impossible circumstances, and simply wait. The prophet Isaiah wrote, "In quietness and trust is your strength." Not in the volume of your prayers, not in the intensity of your pleading, not in your ability to convince God of what you need. Your strength, your power, your breakthrough is in the quietness. It's in the trust that's demonstrated when you silence everything else and position yourself to hear from him. Imagine this. Imagine what would happen if you gave God just 10 minutes of complete silence every day, not scrolling on your phone with worship music in the background, not praying out loud or reading or writing, just sitting in His presence, aware of Him, available to Him, waiting on Him. What if I told you that in those 10 minutes, God could download strategies for your business, healing for your emotions, revelation about your purpose, and clarity about your next step that hours of activity could never produce? This is your moment to understand what Jesus really meant when He said, "Be still and know that I am God." That word "still" in the original Hebrew doesn't just mean stop moving. It means to let go, to release, to surrender, to cease striving. It means to stop trying to be God and let Him be God. And in that surrendered silence, in that holy hush, you come to know Him in ways that transform everything. But here's what the enemy has done. He's convinced this generation that silence is uncomfortable, that waiting is weakness, that if you're not constantly doing something, saying something, posting something, achieving something, then you're falling behind. He's filled your life with noise because he knows that if you ever discovered the power of silence before God, if you ever learned to truly wait on Him, you would become unstoppable. You would hear God's voice so clearly that no weapon formed against you could prosper. You would move with such divine timing that every door would open at exactly the right moment. The enemy doesn't want you to know that silence is where miracles are conceived. It's where faith is strengthened. It's where anxiety loses its grip and peace that passes understanding takes root in your soul. When you practice the discipline of silence before God, you're not doing nothing. You're doing the one thing that matters most. You're positioning yourself to receive everything God has been trying to give you. Wait, there's more Jesus revealed about this that most believers have never understood. When He taught His disciples to pray, He didn't just give them words. He gave them a pattern. And embedded in that pattern is a principle that we often miss. He said, "When you pray, go into your room, close the door, and pray to your Father who is in secret." That room isn't just a physical location. It's a spiritual posture. It's the inner chamber of your heart where you shut out every other voice, every distraction, every demand, and you meet with God alone in silence. In that secret place, in that sacred silence, your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you openly. He will answer prayers you haven't even voiced yet. He will heal wounds you didn't know how to name. He will give you strength for battles you don't even see coming. But you have to show up. You have to create the space. You have to value His presence more than His presence, His voice more than His blessings. Think about Mary and Martha. When Jesus came to their home, Martha was busy doing all the right things. She was serving, working, preparing, moving, talking. But Mary sat at Jesus' feet in silence, just listening. And when Martha complained that Mary wasn't helping, what did Jesus say? He said, "Martha, Martha, you are worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed, or indeed only one. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her." What had Mary chosen? She chose silence. She chose listening. She chose presence over productivity. And Jesus said that was the better choice. That was the one thing that mattered most. Not the doing, not the serving, not the activity, the sitting, the stillness, the silence. Because in that silence, she was receiving something that would transform her life forever. She was hearing truth directly from the source. She was experiencing intimacy that no amount of busy work could provide. This is the part that changes everything. God is not impressed by your exhaustion. He's not moved by your frantic efforts to make things happen in your own strength. He's drawn to your surrender. He responds to your willingness to stop, to wait, to trust him enough to be silent in his presence. When you learn to wait on God in silence, you're declaring with your whole being that he is enough, that his presence is sufficient, that you don't need answers right this second because you trust his timing completely. And here's what happens in that place of trust. Here's what happens when you consistently practice sacred silence before God. Your spiritual ears become tuned to his frequency. You start hearing his voice in the middle of your day, in the chaos of your circumstances, in the noise of your life. You start recognizing his leading so clearly that you no longer second-guess every decision. You develop a sensitivity to his spirit that guides you away from danger and toward destiny. The psalmist wrote, "I waited patiently for the Lord. He turned to me and heard my cry." Did you catch that? The waiting came first. The patience came first. The silence came first. And then God turned. Then he heard. Then he answered. Your breakthrough begins when you stop demanding and start waiting. When you stop talking at God and start listening to God. When you trade your agenda for his presence. Heaven is waiting for you to discover that the most powerful position you can take is on your knees in silence. The most effective warfare you can wage is worship without words. The fastest way to breakthrough is often the slowest, quietest, most patient path of waiting on God. Because in that waiting, he's not making you grovel. He's not testing to see how desperate you'll get. He's transforming you. He's aligning you. He's preparing you for what he's about to do. Jesus spent 40 days in the wilderness in fasting and silence before he began his public ministry. 40 days of quiet preparation for 3 years of world-changing power. Moses spent 40 years in the wilderness in silence before God called him from a burning bush to deliver an entire nation. Joseph spent years in prison, in silence, waiting on God's promise before he became second in command of Egypt. David spent years in caves and deserts, in hiding and in silence before he became king. Do you see the pattern? Every person God used in powerful ways, every breakthrough that changed history, every miracle that defied natural law was preceded by a season of silence, a season of waiting, a season of being alone with God while he did a work in secret that would be revealed in public at exactly the right time. You are in your season right now. This is not delay. This is preparation. This is not silence from God. This is silence with God. And this is where it gets powerful. When you embrace the silence instead of running from it, when you stop filling every quiet moment with noise and distraction, something supernatural begins to happen. Your soul starts to breathe again. The anxiety that's been suffocating you begins to lift. The confusion that's been paralyzing you starts to clear. And into that cleared space, into that quiet soul, God begins to speak. His voice is not loud. It's not forceful. It's not competing with all the other voices. It's a still, small voice that you can only hear when everything else gets quiet. And what he wants to tell you in that silence will change everything. He wants to remind you of who you are. He wants to reveal where he's taking you. He wants to heal what's been broken and restore what's been stolen. But he needs you to stop talking long enough to listen. This is what Jesus revealed about waiting on God that transforms everything. It's not about duration, it's about devotion. You could spend an hour in prayer and never actually connect with God because your mind is racing. Your mouth is moving, but your heart isn't present. Or you could spend 10 minutes in complete silence, fully surrendered, fully available, fully expectant, and encounter God in ways that mark you forever. It's not about how long you wait, it's about how you wait. When you wait with expectation, when you sit in silence with faith that God is going to speak, when you position yourself with the confidence that His presence is worth more than anything else you could be doing, that's when the supernatural happens. That's when breakthrough comes. That's when chains break and doors open and impossible situations suddenly shift. Because you've created space for God to move. You've gotten your agenda out of the way. You've surrendered control and invited His perfect will. The enemy doesn't want you to know that your silence terrifies him. When you stop striving and start resting in God's presence, when you stop trying to make things happen and start trusting God to work things out, the enemy loses his power over you. He can't manipulate you with fear. He can't rush you into bad decisions. He can't overwhelm you with anxiety, because you're anchored in the one who controls everything. You're connected to the source of all wisdom, all power, all provision. Your breakthrough begins when you stop seeing silence as emptiness and start experiencing it as fullness. When you stop viewing waiting as wasted time and start recognizing it as sacred preparation. When you stop being afraid of the quiet and start being hungry for the encounter with God that only happens there. This is the discipline that every spiritual giant throughout history has mastered. This is the secret that separates those who merely know about God from those who truly know God intimately. So here's what you need to do. Here's how you activate this power of silence in your life starting right now. First, you make a commitment. You decide that every single day you're going to give God time in silence. Not prayer time where you're listing your requests. Not reading time where you're studying scripture. Pure silence where you're simply present with Him, aware of Him, available to Him. Start with just 5 minutes if that's all you can do. Set a timer. Sit in a quiet place. Close your eyes. And just breathe. Just be. Just wait. Second, you come with expectation. You don't come to the silence with doubt or obligation. You come believing that God is going to meet you there. You come expecting to sense His presence, to hear His voice, to receive His peace. Your expectation positions you to receive. Your faith activates the supernatural. When you show up believing that something powerful is about to happen in the silence, God responds to that faith. Third, you release control. You stop trying to orchestrate the encounter. You stop planning what you're going to say or trying to make yourself feel a certain way. You simply surrender. You let go of your agenda, your timeline, your expectations of how God should speak or what He should say. You trust that He knows exactly what you need and He's going to give it to you in the silence. This surrender, this release, this letting go is where true intimacy with God begins. Fourth, you stay consistent. You don't give up after 1 try or even 10 tries. You commit to the discipline of daily silence before God even when you don't feel anything, even when your mind wanders, even when it seems like nothing is happening. Because something is always happening in the spirit realm when you position yourself before God. Seeds are being planted. Foundations are being laid. Your spiritual capacity is expanding. Trust the process. Honor the practice. Show up every single day. And fifth, you listen with your spirit, not just your ears. God's voice doesn't always come in audible words. Sometimes it's a knowing, an impression, a sense of peace about a decision, a verse that suddenly comes to mind with fresh revelation, a shift in your perspective that happens without explanation. Pay attention to what rises up in your spirit during the silence and immediately after. That's often God speaking. That's His wisdom being downloaded. That's breakthrough beginning to manifest. Jesus is telling you right now that everything you've been asking for, everything you've been believing for, everything you've been desperate to see happen in your life is on the other side of your willingness to wait on Him in silence. The job you need, the healing you're seeking, the relationship you desire, the direction you're lacking, the peace you're craving, it's all available in the secret place of silence with God, but you have to value it enough to prioritize it. You have to want Him more than you want the answers. God wants you to know that He's not withholding from you. He's not making you wait because He's cruel or indifferent. He's drawing you into deeper intimacy. He's teaching you to recognize His voice above all others. He's preparing you to carry the breakthrough He's about to give you. And that preparation happens in the silence. That transformation happens in the waiting. That strengthening happens when you choose His presence over everything else. This is your moment to step into a dimension of relationship with God that you've never experienced before. This is your invitation to discover the power that Jesus walked in, the secret that every revivalist has known, the discipline that unlocks supernatural breakthrough, the power of silence, the transformation that happens when you wait on God, not passively but expectantly, not in doubt but in faith, not in fear but in trust. When you do this, when you make silence before God a non-negotiable part of your daily life, you're going to see things shift. You're going to feel anxiety release its grip. You're going to hear God's voice with clarity you've never had before. You're going to make decisions with confidence because you know you've heard from Him. You're going to walk in peace that nothing can shake because you're constantly connected to the source of all peace. You're going to experience breakthrough after breakthrough because you're moving in divine timing instead of trying to force things in your own timing. Your life is about to change, not because of anything you're going to do or say or achieve, but because you're finally going to be still and know that He is God. You're finally going to stop striving and start receiving. You're finally going to value His presence more than His presence, His voice more than His blessings, His timing more than your urgency. And in that sacred space of silence, in that holy place of waiting, God is going to meet you in ways that mark you forever. This is not just another spiritual practice to add to your routine. This is the doorway to everything you've been searching for. This is the key that unlocks every promise God has spoken over your life. This is the power that the enemy has tried to keep hidden from you because he knows that once you discover it, once you truly learn to wait on God in silence, nothing will be able to stop what God is about to do in you and through you. So I'm challenging you right now. I'm calling you higher. I'm inviting you into the secret place where miracles are born and faith becomes sight. Starting today, give God your silence. Give Him your undivided attention. Give Him space to speak without interruption. And watch what He does. Watch how He moves. Watch how everything begins to align when you finally stop trying to make it happen and start trusting Him to work it out. You were created for this kind of intimacy with God. You were designed to hear His voice and walk in His ways. You were called to experience His presence in ways that transform everything about how you live and love and lead. And it all begins in the silence. It all starts when you wait. Heaven is cheering you on. Angels are standing ready to move on your behalf. And God Himself is waiting for you to come into that quiet place where only you and He exist, where His voice is the only one that matters, where His love overwhelms every fear, and His peace silences every storm. This is your breakthrough moment. This is your transformation beginning. This is the power of silence that Jesus revealed, and now it's yours to walk in. Go into that secret place. Wait on Him. Listen for Him. And watch your life change from this day forward.